Well, the running time of the album is a little over an hour. It's about 69 minutes. So I'm curious to know how long you spent in the studio recording it. And did it come together pretty quickly? Did you do a lot of takes of things?
Well, the session started out with a problem. The piano was supplied by Yamaha. I went to the showroom and picked out a nice instrument, but I had to get a certain. The condition was it had to be someone that was a Yamaha endorsed tuner.
Oh.
And the person that came in just, I lost pretty much the first day because he wasn't together, and I had to scrounge around and find another piano tuner.
Mm.
But I'd say, I got that results in about 2.5 days.
All right.
And I would try to record, I'd have my sort of morning coffee sessions, and then I'd go take a 3-mile run, and I'd have a session after a run. And then maybe at night I'd have, some of the Cabernet sessions.
And would you play something like Old Folks and then go listen to it and decide if you want to do it again, or would you just play it through a few times and then listen to it?
No, I just recorded a lot of stuff, and I just figured I recorded a whole bunch of stuff, and then I got away from it, didn't listen to it for probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then I said, okay, what am I going to put on this record?
So you have the material for a Show of Hands Part 2 if you wanted to.
I could. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned George Shearing. I understand as a teenager you took private piano lessons from him. He's one of my all-time favorite musicians. I mean, I have a sentimental attachment to Vince Guaraldi just because, as a little kid I saw the Charlie Brown stuff. But for a musician to just sort of like, I would equate George Shearing sort of with Chet Atkins. If you listen to Chet Atkins' guitar playing, there's an elegance and sort of not a perfectionism to it, but he seems to like be one level beyond everybody else in a way.
Right.
And George, you mentioned playing with humor. George Shearing certainly did that, and a lot of harmonic knowledge. And of course, he was a blind individual. So, I didn't even know someone like him would give piano lessons. So now I've got this thing where you were his student. What were the lessons like?
Basically, he had 2 Steinways in his studio, and we would play songs together, and like piano duets. And I just would kind of be transfixed in watching him play. And it's funny, he was a really open-minded guy. He was a very a true gentleman. This is maybe after a couple of years of studying with him. I was in my first year of university, I believe. And he says, I want to play you something. And he says, follow me, and he's blind. So we go into this dark room, which is his record room, his music room, with like file cabinets full of albums, which were all labeled with Braille. So it was dark in there. I couldn't see what he was pulling out. And he's doing all this in the dark, and he pulls out an album. He says, I want you to listen to this. He says, I think this is the most fantastic music. And he puts on Weather Report, Heavy Weather.
Wow.
So here's a very traditional, old school kind of bop-ish piano player, turning me on to Weather Report.
So it was kind of like a Marion McPartland thing where you would sit and play duets, and then he would maybe listen to what you were doing and say, hey, maybe you should have done that. It sounds like he did the lesson in a way that was fun for him as well.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what are some of the things that he taught you that have stayed with you through the years that you still think about in terms of the way you play and arrange and maybe compose?
Probably the most important thing I learned from him was to respect harmony and to learn it. To really, you want to be friends with it and not be intimidated by it. And of course, restraint as well. And he would do these things. I don't know if you know his solo piano record called My Ship, which is, a lot of piano players out there just think it's one of the best solo piano records ever. But he would do this sort of thing where reharmonizing what people would traditionally think of as corny songs, trivial, corny songs such as Happy Days Are Here to Stay, and he'll just do the most outrageously gorgeous reharmonization.
This is what I meant about the elegance, the sort of a Chet Atkins type thing, where you can grab how much is that doggy in the window and make it sound like something that Jerome Kern wrote or something.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Well, our last topic is going to transition us from the single musician performance to the opposite extreme. This is an orchestral album called Revolutions that you did in 2008 with conductor Vince Mendoza. And it features 10 compositions from your solo albums that have been arranged for the orchestra. It must have been pretty thrilling for you to hear your work performed by so many musicians with such a big sound. Did you track your piano simultaneously while the orchestra was being recorded?
Yes, I did. And that could be nerve-wracking, but I was kind of used to that. It actually, I do these film scores in New York on occasion. And, I'm sitting there with a grand piano right, a few feet away from the woodwinds or the violas. And, if you make a mistake, you and 85 other people have to redo the whole thing. So, the pressure's on to play well. So, yes, I did record in the room with the orchestra. That it was never intended from the beginning to be a CD. It was Vince had invited me over to only do, I think it was 6 songs at first, for the purposes of a radio broadcast only. And we did that, and I got a copy of it, and I was just, in love with it. And I said, hey, Vince, we got to make this a CD. And so he pulled some strings and worked out another time, and we recorded some more songs.
Yeah, I've seen some quotes from him that he thinks is one of, if not the best thing that he's been involved with.
Well, he's told me on several occasions that he thinks it's the best CD that the Metropole has recorded.
Did Vince choose the material, or did you have input into that as well?
He had all my recordings, and before we got this whole thing going, I just, told him a list of the songs that I thought would lend themselves well to an orchestra, and he told me the ones that he thought would, and we just narrowed it down. So we worked on it together.
Yeah, well, of the 10 tracks on the album, 4 were originally from Song of the Sun, 2 were from Lost at the Carnival, 1 was from Truly, and 3 were from Advocate.
Right.
So everything's pretty well represented. The one I'm going to play originally appeared on Lost at the Carnival. It's called Holiday for Pete and Gladys, which are pretty specific sounding names. So who are Pete and Gladys?
That was a TV show in the early 50s, one of those, series television shows. And this, I think that was also Stan Harrison. He, because he was on the original recording of that on Lost at the Carnival album. And I think I got that. He's really good with titles. He's a very smart guy, good with words. He says, yeah, this sounds like music from, Pete and Gladys show. Yeah.
Okay, well, from his 2008 collaboration with Vince Mendoza and the Metropole Orchestra, here's Jim Beard with Holiday for Pete and Gladys. Well, Jim, on behalf of my listeners and myself, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me about your music, and when your next album comes out, you're welcome back anytime to talk about that.
That'd be great, Dan. I really appreciate you doing this, and it's special for artists like me to take part in this.
We're going to close the show now with a double dose. First, we're going to hear a track from Truly called Gonna Tell on You. And then after that, from Advocate, we're going to hear a track called Mirrors. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time. So long, everybody.